What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Linc here with another episode of Shiny Cardboard Chronicles. And if you're new here on Shiny Cardboard Chronicles, what we do is we cover the shiny cardboard, because let's face it, Pokemon is all about the shiny cardboard. I love shiny cardboard and you love shiny cardboard too. Not only do we cover shiny cardboard, we cover the PSA 10 pop counts as well as the artists that give us such incredible artwork. On today's episode, we're going to be covering the first 8 holos from the 1999 Jungle set, and this is the third Pokemon set released ever in English. First up, we have this Aerodactyl Pokemon card, and this is what the description of this Pokemon card says. A ferocious prehistoric Pokemon that goes for the enemy's throat with its serrated saw-like fangs. Very, very gory description of a Pokemon card, but hey, it is what it is. It was 1999 back then, and people were definitely less sensitive than they were than today. The artist who gave us this Aerodactyl artwork is Kagumaru Hamina. Again, the artist's name is Kagumaru Hamina. Now, for the PSA 10 Pops of the first edition, there is currently 197. Again, there is currently only 197 cards of this card in a PSA 10 first edition, and that is out of 3,791 subscriptions. If you're looking to get this card was sold in a first edition PSA 10 for about $900 to $1,000. So between that price range, that's what it was sold for last year. Now, in a regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 71 of this card. Again, in a regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 71, and that is out of 4,906. Again, that is out of 4,906. And if you're looking to get this card, last May it was sold for around 600, and in April it was sold for around 300. So I'm not sure if the price is going down or just not in demand, or maybe the person got lucky. You tell me, what are you looking to pay for this card in a PSA 10 regular holo? Time for my favorite of the 3 legendary bird Pokemon, Articuno. The description of this card says, a legendary bird Pokemon that is said to appear to dune people who are lost in icy mountains. And the artist who gave us this incredible artwork is Mitsuhiro Arita. Again, the artist's name is Mitsuhiro Arita. In a first edition PSA 10, there is currently 145. Let me say that again. There is currently 145 of this card in a PSA 10 first edition, and that is out of 4,715. In September, this Articuno was sold for about $2,200, and in May, it was sold for about $2,700. So you're looking at about a range of $2,300 to get this card in a first edition PSA 10. For the regular holo PSA 10s of this Articuno, there is currently, I don't know why, only 66. Again, in regular holo PSA 10, there is currently only 66, and that is out of 6,252 submissions. There was 3 sold this year for around $300. Not too pricey, but I would definitely say pricey for just one Pokemon card. But hey, if you're really trying to get a PSA 10 vintage card, go ahead and spend that money for this card if you like it. A fan favorite Pokemon, Ditto. When I show people a picture of Ditto, they usually always say, oh, I know that Pokemon, or I like that Pokemon. It is definitely a fan favorite among Pokemon fans. The description that this Pokemon card says is, capable of copying an enemy's genetic code to instantly transform itself into a duplicate of the enemy. And we all know Ditto is the master of copying. There is not a Pokemon out there better that does copying better than Ditto. That makes me think, is there even a Pokemon other than Ditto that can actually copy? Let me know in the comments if there is. I've been out the Pokemon game for a while and there's been about 1,000 plus Pokemon, so please catch me up to speed. The artist who gave us the first ever Ditto Pokemon card is Keiji Kinubachi. Again, the artist's name is Keiji Kinubachi. For the PSA 10 first editions of this Ditto, there is currently 303. Again, in a PSA 10 first edition, there is currently 303, and that is out of 3,165 submissions. In September of this year, this card sold for about $500. Last year, the highest bid sold for this card was about $850. I'm not sure why. Maybe we're in a declining market of Pokemon, but I would definitely say no. But hey, shout out to the person who got this card for $300 cheaper than the person did last year. In a regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 109. Let me say it one more time. In a regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 109, and that is out of 3,819. And if you're looking to get this card, it'll cost you about $200 or so to get this card in a regular holo PSA 10. I believe this next card is the most expensive card in this fossil set, and especially because the holo has the rainbow, and that is this Dragon Knight Pokemon card. Absolutely love this Pokemon card, not only for the rainbow holo, as well as the artwork as well. I wonder why they made Dragon Knight a normal type Pokemon, especially because Dratini and Dragonair are marine-based Pokemon. In the description, it even says, an extremely rarely seen marine Pokemon, its intelligence is said to match that of humans. The artist who has blessed us with one of the most iconic WotC era Pokemon artworks is Kagumaro Hamino. Again, the artist's name is Kagumaro Hamino. In first edition PSA 10, there is currently 233 copies. Again, in a first edition PSA 10, there is currently 233 copies, and that is out of 5,664 submissions. And if you're looking to get this card in a first edition PSA 10, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. It's going to cost $4,500 to get this card in a first edition PSA 10. In regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 60. Again, in a regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 60 copies, and that is out of 9,513. Again, let me say that one more time. There is 60 copies of this card in a PSA 10 out of 9,513, and it'll cost you about a high of $2,000 and a low of $1,600 for this card in a regular holo PSA 10, which is pretty pricey for a non-first edition card. Halloween was a few weeks ago, and I definitely kept seeing a lot of this Pokemon popping up. This has to be the best Halloween Pokemon of all time. Let me know in the comments, do you think Gengar is the perfect Pokemon for Halloween, or is it the favoriteest Pokemon around the Halloween time? Let me know in the comments. The description of this Pokemon card says, under a full moon, this Pokemon likes to mimic the shadows of people and laugh at their fright. Definitely, if you know, Gengar is 100% what Gengar loves to do. In first edition PSA 10, there is currently 178 copies. Again, in first edition of PSA 10, there is currently only 178 copies, and that is out of 4,650 submissions. There was 3 sales this year with a high of 4,000 from Z&G Emporium. Shout out Z&G Emporium. I'm definitely going to get that sponsor one day from them. And it's probably the best or one of the best sellers and buyers of Pokemon cards out there. And it was also for a low of $3,300. So me knowing how credible Z&G Emporium is, I know that 4,000 sale was definitely 100%. In regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 49 copies. Again, in regular holo PSA 10, there is currently 49 copies, and that is out of 6,794. And it looks like 2 were sold this year for about $1,300. Oh, and let's not forget the artist who gave us this artwork. The artist's name is Kiji Kenubuchi. Again, the artist's name is Kiji Kenubachi. Definitely said it better this second time around. Staying with the spooky Pokemon vibes, we have this Haunter Pokemon card next up. And if you're new to Pokemon or kind of forgot, Haunter actually evolves into Gengar, the previous Pokemon that we covered. The description of this Pokemon card says, because of its ability to slip through black walls, it's said to be from another dimension. That is something I never really thought about. But what if Haunter is from another dimension? It might be the first Pokemon ever from another dimension. An illustrator that we have not heard on today's episode is Ken Sugimori. Again, the illustrator's name is Ken Sugimori, who gave us this spooky Haunter artwork. In first edition of PSA 10, there is currently 426 copies. Again, in first edition of PSA 10, there is currently 426 copies, and that is out of 4,000 submissions. And if you're looking to get this card in a first edition of PSA 10, it'll cost you about $500 to get this card in a first edition PSA 10. Now, for the regular hollow PSA 10, there is currently 126 copies. Again, in regular hollow PSA 10, there is currently 126 copies, and that is out of 4,761 submissions. And if you're looking to get this card in a regular hollow PSA 10, it'll cost you about half of the first edition for about $200 to $250 in a regular hollow PSA 10. A Pokemon based off of a real-life martial artist, Bruce Lee, we have Hitmonlee. The description of this Pokemon card says, when in a hurry, its legs lengthen progressively. It runs smoothly with extra long looping strides. Just imagine getting kicked by Hitmonlee. I swear you're going to be done for at least a long time. The artist who gave us this Hitmonlee artwork is again Ken Sugimori. Again, the artist's name is Ken Sugimori. In a first edition of PSA 10, there is currently 174 copies. Again, in a first edition of PSA 10, there is currently 174 copies, and that is out of 3,301 submissions. There was 2 sold this year, a low of $650 and a high of $800. So let me know, what are you willing to pay for this card in a first edition PSA 10? In regular hollow PSA 10, there is currently only 26 copies of this card. Again, a very low number. In a regular hollow PSA 10, there is currently only 26 PSA 10s. And that is out of 3,842. And apparently, it'll cost you about $700 plus to get this card in a regular hollow PSA 10. That's kind of weird. I'm guessing maybe because it's a very low PSA 10 pop for this card. The last card on today's episode is the Master of Hypnosis, and that is Hypno. I really love having this Pokemon in the Pokemon Red and Blue Pokemon games. The description of this Pokemon card says, when it locks eyes with an enemy, it will use a mix of side moves such as Hypnosis and Confusion. For the third Pokemon card in a row, the artist's name is none other than Ken Sugimori. Again, the artist's name is Ken Sugimori. In first edition PSA 10, there is currently 272 copies. Again, in first edition PSA 10, there is currently 272 copies, and that is out of 3,184 submissions. And it looks like 2 were sold this year for about $400 or so. Not really expensive for a first edition Pokemon card, but I guess it's because it's Hypno and it's really not a Pokemon many people care about. In a regular hollow PSA 10, there is currently 77 copies. Again, in regular hollow PSA 10, There is currently 77 copies, and that is out of 3,896. And it looks like 2 were sold this year, one as a high of 300 and for a low of 150. So I'm guessing maybe around the 200 range is a perfect price for this card in a regular hollow PSA 10. Well, there you have it. Another episode of Shiny Cardboard Chronicles comes to an end. Stay tuned for the next episode where we cover the next 8 Shiny Cardboard in the Pokemon set Fossil. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.